Denzel Washington has earned, I think it's his 9th Oscar nomination for this film, exactly 30 years after his first Oscar nomination, which was for Cry Freedom back in 1988. So this is a strange tragi-comic drama from Dan Gilroy, who was responsible for Nightcrawler. And Denzel Washington, he's very impressively schlubby as this kind of awkward savant lawyer whose mind is on one level like a steel trap. He remembers facts and figures. He is a fierce advocate for civil rights and activism, but he's no good with people. He's no good in court. So he's become the backroom backbone of a law company where he's worked for years. But now change is coming.
The doctors have concluded that William is in a permanent vegetative state.
Oh, well, he'll surprise him.
Well, we'd like to believe that, but not this time. If the firm was stable, we'd have time to mourn, but it's not, and we don't. George has generously offered to take time from his busy practice to sort through the remaining cases and collect what's due.
Well, I probably haven't had time to consider all the various ramifications of this.
None of us have.
I can't live on my accolades.
Well, but Lynn was hoping to give you, what's the receptionist's name?
Vernita.
Vernita, severance. But looking over the books, it just doesn't seem possible.
I'll take over.
No, you're not capable of continuing the practice.
But I'll take over because in the architecture of this firm, I am a pillar.
Yes, and Roman, I'd hope to reward you for that.
Hope don't get the job done.
So suddenly he's out of work. He lives in a rundown apartment beset by construction noise. He blocks out the noise with headphones on which he listens to a classic soul soundtrack. He does his work on paper. He's been working for years on this vast sort of class action suit, which is to do with the ramifications of plea bargaining and how, cases don't go to trial. It's really important, but he can't finish it on his own. But he needs money. He needs a job. And Colin Farrell's character, who you heard there, realizes that he is very smart and realizes that he may be very useful. And he offers him a job, which at first he doesn't want to take. He goes to an advocacy group where he's told by Carmen Ejogo, who's terrific, incidentally, that he wants a job. But she says, but everybody here is a volunteer. She asks him if he wants to give a lecture, and he does, and only to discover that he's way out of step with the current activist crowd. He's an old sexist, chauvinist dinosaur as far as they're concerned. And so he decides, well, I'm fed up. I am fed up with fighting battles. He says, I'm tired of doing the impossible for the ungrateful. And he decides to sell out. Now, this is not a plot spoiler because the film begins with him accusing himself of having turned his back on everything he believes in, and then goes back a few weeks to see how we got to this point. It's a peculiar film. It's full of interesting ideas, and I like that thing about the balance of the tragic and the comic. It has very high ambitions, and it has some outrageous dramatic conceits, only some of which bear creative fruit. One of the problems is that the time frame is pretty compressed, and the transition that his character is meant to go through in a very compressed time frame sort of, doesn't ring true in terms of its credibility. However, it's okay, it's a narrative construction, and that's fine. It also, I think, loses its way as we get towards the final act. It's like it can't quite decide how to tie all of this stuff up. But that said, and again, this brings us back to the subject of downsizing. I said downsizing was a film that is a mess and didn't work for me satisfactorily because I felt like the filmmaker didn't know where it was going. Yet we've talked about Three Billboards as a film, you don't know where it's going, but you feel like you're in a really safe pair of hands. In the case of this, firstly, it is a very, very good central performance. Denzel Washington is really terrific in it. You do believe in his character, even when the drama isn't substantial enough to make that belief utterly ring true. And although the film doesn't ultimately hang together, although the film looks like a lot of different things fighting for central control of it, the comedy, the tragedy, the drama, the politics, the sort of particular social relations, it's held together by his performance. And even though I think in the end it doesn't work, I enjoyed watching it have a really good go because it felt like it was taking a certain amount of risks that I hadn't expected it to take. So, although I think in the end it's a brilliant performance in a film which is an honourable misstep, I was never bored. I kept wanting to go with it. And the times that I did go with it, I found it entertaining, even though ultimately at the end it was like, okay, it didn't add up to much, but it was fun getting here and I admire the ambition.